Happy holidays, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to share my review of Deadlands, the Weird West box set from Pinnacle Entertainment Group. The content within is written by Shane Lacey Hensley, Matthew Cutter, and Rob Weiland. This box set we'll be taking a look at is available now. It carries an MSRP of $99.99. Now, if you want to just pick up the core setting book, that carries an MSRP of $39.99, or you can grab just the PDF over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Deadlands, the Weird West box set. A few things I want to mention before I jump on in. First of all, the fine folks over at Pinnacle Entertainment Group were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's very, very important that you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book and adventure that's contained within, but I do want to give you a very good feel for what you're going to find inside this box set, and of course, share my thoughts about it as well. Lastly, there is an adventure. It's about 30 pages long. I am going to flip through that. If you are a player and your game master has picked up the Deadlands core book or this box set, or you've heard through the grapevine that they're looking to run Showdown at Sundown, then I would recommend, when I get to that point, tune out. Even though I'm not going to reveal any major spoilers, yeah, there might be some spoilers simply because we're paging on through. All right, so you have been warned. So this is the box that the box set comes in. What I'm going to do is I am going to share a look at the various items that come in this box set. I will save a page through of the core setting book and adventure for last. So nice, sturdy box. It's got a cool full color insert. If I can actually get the box open. Open sesame. So there we go. We've got bennies in here. I've taken some of the bennies out to give you a closer look at. We've got ammo trackers. And then the way this is set up, the various different items will fit in here very, very nicely. So one of the first things that we get is a set of dice, including a wild die. So we've got our 4-sider, 6-sider, 8-sider, 12-sider, 10-sider, and 20-sider. I don't know why I jumped from the 8-sider to the 12. And then we've got the wild die, which has the Deadlands symbol on its 6 face. So, of course, I'm not going to go through the mechanics of Savage Worlds. By all means, if you have not checked out my review of the core rulebook, please do so. But we do get a set of dice as well as the logoed wild die. As I mentioned, we've got these ammunition markers counting down from 20 to 0. We have power cards, which are going to provide various different powers for your player characters to have these cards if they happen to have these powers. We have an adventure deck, which comes into play with the provided adventure. So we've got a few of those cards here. We've got gear cards, which we do get artwork on, which I do appreciate that. The Steam Gatling gun, Epitaph camera, electrostatic belt, etc. So we get the stats about it, price of them, and the image also. We've got 25 bennies which are poker chips, and they've got various pieces of artwork on them. And then we have the Deadlands logo and artwork on the other side. So once again, we've got 25 of these. Very nice. They are plenty heavy. They're not true poker chips, but they are far more than just cheapo plastic tokens either. So they kind of click together like you would poker chips. I'm sure the mic is probably picking that up. We have a Herod deck, which is for the demons, which possess the Herod characters. Definitely like the artwork on this. And there are some rules for the Herod and their Manitou running loose. So that's what these cards are utilized for. And then lastly, as far as cards go, we have archetype cards, which I like these a lot. These are these extra large tarot-ish size, although they are far wider than a tarot card would be. But height-wise, they're about what you would have with a larger size tarot deck. So we've got all the various different archetypes, their attributes, and their skills, which if you are familiar with Savage Worlds, those are known as traits, and they're utilized pretty much equally. And then on the back, we've got examples of hindrances, edges, gear, and powers that these archetypes would have, as well as some advances, some recommendations for advances. Always keep in mind, the player characters can create whatever sort of characters they want. These are simply archetypes. So Savage Worlds is not a game like, say, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. You don't have classes in Savage Worlds. You can utilize archetypes if you would like, but you don't have to. Here are the Herod, which are the undead, which have been brought back to life, and they are driven by these Manitou, these spirits from the happy hunting grounds, or I guess I should say the hunting grounds, because they're not necessarily so happy. So we've got these. Now, I will point out, I was very, very surprised that this box set did not include an action deck. And the reason I'm very surprised is because the action deck is utilized far more in Deadlands than it would be just in just a standard Savage Worlds game. Because yes, you use the action cards for initiative and combat order resolution. You also use it for chases, but in Deadlands, you use it for duels. So showdowns in the street, shootouts in the streets, and of course, for various different games of chance, which you would find in a saloon. So, like I said, I was really surprised there is no action deck. Now, granted, you just need to get yourself a 54 card deck. So standard 52 plus your 2 jokers, and you're fine. But to be very honest, I could easily seen these traded in, those traded in, and those traded in for one action deck, which was themed for Deadlands. Now, the action deck is available as a separate purchase. It's just not in this box set. I would definitely not trade in the archetype cards because I like these a lot, and they give your players great ideas for the sorts of characters that they can play in Deadlands. Now, we also have a map of the Weird West, circa 1884. Now, keep in mind, I did a first look on the Gaming Gang Dispatch, my live show, not too long ago. So if you want to get a closer look at any of this, by all means, check that video out. There are timestamps because I do share the tabletop gaming news of the day on my live show. So if you want to skip past that, you can. There are timestamps to do so. So we got the map there. We also have a landscape game master screen, which is packed with info. So we've got our situational rules right in front of us. Fear table, reaction, dealing with the devil. That is another aspect of Deadlands, which would be utilizing an action deck or a standard deck of cards. Like I said, really surprised that there's no action deck in this, and it is a sticking point with me. I will point that out right now. It is going to affect the final review score of this box set. You might think it's kind of silly. I don't. All right, so those are the extra goodies. Now we're going to take a look at the setting book as well as the adventure. Now, this is a setting book that does require the core rule book for Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. This is not like, say, the Savage Pathfinder book, which has all the rules within. So we are going to get a bunch of background about the world of Deadlands. And if you are not overly familiar with the world of Deadlands, this is a game that has been around since, off the top of my head, I want to say it was 1986. I know I was out of high school. I was in college when this first came out. And I picked it up. And I used to pick up all the splat books, all the dime novel adventures. Never ran it. It was another one of those role-playing games where I was like, yeah, you know, I like this setting. This is really cool. And of course, the core mechanics of the game have changed over the years. Now, I had somebody share a comment on my first look video talking about Savage Worlds actually derives from the miniatures game that was released. I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, The Great Rail Wars, which was for Deadlands. I was like, wow, I did not know that. Or I may have known that. I just didn't recall that. I don't remember if I had the miniatures game or not. I don't seem to recall having had the minis. So I don't think I picked up The Great Rail Wars. So what we're going to get here is a setting book that is laser focused on Deadlands for Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. So we've got new hindrances. We've got new edges. And of course, the edges are built upon various different aspects. So we've got combat edges. We've got social edges. We've got a bunch of gear and goods. Now, of course, the world of Deadlands is one of an alternate history in which the American Civil War dragged on. I want to say, I think it's 1868. There's an earthquake in California, which actually changes the entire landscape of California. And it also releases these pockets of ghost rock, which is this sort of supernatural-ish mineral or resource that can be burned, and it provides great energy. And of course, that changes the complexion of everything. So there is a steampunk vibe to Deadlands, the Weird West. There is also a horror aspect to it as well, because we've got the Reckoners. And here in this new edition, we find out who the Reckoners really are, because in previous editions, you didn't know. They were just supernatural evil baddies. Here we get a bit more detail into who the Reckoners actually are. And what they're looking to do is they're looking to create a hell on earth. And the player characters are going to be fighting against that. And there are really interesting aspects to Deadlands, the Weird West, where depending on where you're at, there's a certain fear level, you know, how much evil is present. We have various different magic users in Deadlands. So we've got hucksters, we've got hex slingers, we've got the blessed, and of course, we also have the harrowed, which are people who've died and for whatever reason, they have been returned to life, but they are shackled with these demons which drive them, which also provides them with their undead life, I suppose we will say. So we get a lot of background about the world of Deadlands. Now, there is a Deadlands companion that goes further into the history of Deadlands. One of the aspects of Deadlands that was a big deal back in the day, and even with the last edition of Deadlands, Deadlands Reloaded, is the meta plot. And that was something that was a big deal with a lot of role-playing games where you had these adventure campaigns that connected together and the whole setting of the world was changing with the meta plot. Some role-playing games didn't pull it off as well as others. I gotta say, I think Deadlands did a pretty good job of the meta plot because it wasn't a bunch of things going on that the player characters had nothing to do with, which was something that you would see with many role-playing game meta plots. I think one that stands out that a lot of people would probably be familiar with is the Dragonlance series of Dungeons and Dragons Adventures, where it eventually became that the player characters were practically NPCs in their own adventures because all these things were going on that they had no control over because they were tied into the novels. Well, you didn't see that with Deadlands. And there is still a bit of a meta plot going on. And I thought one of the things that's pretty interesting too is that something has taken place. Once again, as I mentioned, now at least the marshals, the game masters, know about this, who the Reckoners truly are. But there's something that's also taken place, which has actually changed the history of the world of Deadlands. So there's also Deadlands Hell on Earth, I think, that is available for the Adventure Edition, where essentially what that is the Reckoners succeeded. And it's sort of a post-apocalyptic game. But the reality is, you're not looking at tying those two games together. It's just kind of, I believe, the modern world. So here you can see we've got a bunch of info giving us details about various different factions, as well as what's going on during this point in time, which in the game world, it's 1884. So then we've got a bestiary with a variety of different creatures and monsters. To my knowledge, there is one large campaign that is available for Deadlands, the Weird West, and that is Blood Drive. There was just another that had successfully kickstarted, and that is, I want to say it's the Night Train. And both of those are Deadlands adventures previously that have been revamped and updated to the Adventure Edition of Savage Worlds. But there are some PDF adventures out there too. There is an adventure that comes with the box set, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. But I've got some issues with it, to be very, very honest. But as far as the core book, I really like the core book a ton. I've always been a fan of Deadlands because I also happen to be a history nut. And one era that I'm pretty knowledgeable about is the American Civil War, as well as the settling of the West. And I really dig some of the fictional aspects of real historic events that Deadlands plays onto. All right, so we're going to have the bestiary. We wrap up with that. We'll have an index, and that is the core setting book, which comes in the box set. As I mentioned previously, if you want to only pick up the setting book in hardcover, you can do so. It's $39.99, or you can grab just the PDF for $19.99. Then we wrap up with Showdown at Sundown, which is our introductory adventure in the box set. But this is supposed to be for seasoned characters. So if you're not overly familiar with Savage Worlds, so not only do you have kind of essentially levels, which allow you to advance to improve your character, we also have these tiers. So we have the novice tier, and then we've got the seasoned tier, and then we have the heroic tier, the legendary tier. So player characters start out as novices, and a lot of the edges that you'll pick up have tiers attached to them. So you can only get some edges if you're a novice or seasoned or legendary, so on and so forth. Well, this adventure is for seasoned characters, so it's kind of silly that we have an adventure here, which is fine. It's kind of a starter adventure, which is essentially going to teach the players and game masters, the marshals, how to play and how to run Deadlands for Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. So it covers all the bases, or thereabouts, all the bases that you're going to encounter as far as mechanics of the game. But these characters aren't starting characters. You're actually going to take characters and advance them until they're seasoned. I got to be honest, that doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. Now, granted, this is an adventure that's been out, so this is not an adventure that was created specifically for this box set, which I think would have probably been a better idea. I will say that there is quite a bit to this adventure because it does clock in at just over 30 pages. So it's not like a lot of beginner adventures we see with role-playing games where it's like, oh, here's 10 pages. Oh, here's 5 pages. Here's an adventure outline. No, this is a full-fledged adventure, just strangely enough, not one for characters who are just starting out. So, once again, not sure why that was the decision that was made. As far as the adventure goes, it's fine. Didn't blow me away, but it's, I'd say on average with most good starting adventures, I would say it's right in the ballpark there. So it's not bad, but it's also not something that blew my socks off or anything along those lines. So that is a look at everything that is in Deadlands: The Weird West box set. Now let's swing on over to the other camera because I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as my review score. So yes, I do have some issues with this box set, but I also don't want you to think that I'm not recommending Deadlands: The Weird West box set, because I certainly am going to, but not as highly as I originally thought I might. And reason behind that is for a $99.99 MSRP, I think there are items that should have been included that weren't. Yes, I'm looking at you, Action Deck. And other things that were included that I don't think are really that big a deal. Maybe there could have been less in this box with a smaller MSRP. I don't necessarily feel that you're not getting a decent value with the $99.99. It just doesn't stand out to me like, say, Pathfinder for Savage Worlds, which I will have a review of in the very near future. Now, granted, that MSRP is twice as much, but I do think you're getting a lot more that is very, very useful in that box than what you might find here. Now, with Deadlands, the Weird West, overall, I really do like it. I think it is a very, very well done setting. It has been around for a long, long time. So it's got that going for it. It can easily be utilized as a straight up traditional Western game. You don't necessarily need to have any of the horror or steampunk aspects of it. But if you want to run kind of a wild, wild west role-playing game, you can certainly do that. Just really don't have the horror aspects, but you've got a bit of the steampunk angle to it. Or you can also sit there and play it as written and have this really bizarre, weird west where the player characters are essentially trying to fight back the forces of hell from taking over not only America's West, but very possibly the entire world. So let me make a recommendation that you might want to consider, because a lot of the history of Deadlands is tied up into some of the relatively recent developments in the meta plot from Deadlands Reloaded. And Deadlands Reloaded was for Savage Worlds, and the difference between Savage Worlds, I believe it's the Deluxe Edition, and Savage Worlds Adventure Edition are relatively minor. They're tweaks. They're not revolutionary changes in the approach to the game. If I were going to be running Deadlands, I would look to pick up some of the adventures from Deadlands Reloaded. Because at this point in time, I think the only big campaign adventure that is available for you to purchase is Blood Drive. And I think Blood Drive is a box set. The Night Train recently kickstarted. It's not out yet. But what I would like to do, like I said, if I were going to run Deadlands, I would go to look to pick up I think it's 4 major plot point campaigns for Deadlands Reloaded and run them for Deadlands. And they have a complete story arc to all of the adventures, which I have not really actually seen close up, but I have heard about and do sound very, very interesting and should provide you with years of gaming for Deadlands, the Weird West. So all in all, I really do like this box set. I just don't like it as much as I could have. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Deadlands, the Weird West box set an 8 out of 10. If it had had maybe a different adventure and that deck of action cards, this would easily be 9 or higher. But unfortunately, those aren't present. So 8 out of 10. I do give it a recommendation. I certainly do like it. You might want to consider just taking a peek at the core book itself. That is also an option that's available to you. But all in all, I definitely do like Deadlands, the Weird West, and its box set. Right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as, I don't know, this review. It'll also inform you when my live show, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, thank you very much for watching. Happy holidays to you all. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.